Hello guys, how are you doing? I'm going to go over chapter 9, which is over digestive system. It's a huge chapter. I already deleted a lot of slides and I'm not sure if I can finish it in half an hour, but I tried. Maybe between half an hour to 45 minutes or so, it will be over. So let's start talking about this chapter. Overview of the digestive system, the organs that are located within the gastrointestinal tract or alimentary canal. That term is not in your textbook, but I would like to add it. So you should know that. They call it alimentary canal or GI tract, the abbreviation for gastrointestinal is called GI tract. Of course, the function is to break down food for us, and then after breaking down the food to be absorbed into the blood vessels eventually. So the molecules of like the mashed potato or rice you eat or protein you eat, eventually they have to be broken down to monosaccharides, glucose molecule, or amino acids and fatty acids. They have to be broken down to a monomer or maybe a dimer, maybe. And then after that, be absorbed into the blood vessels. So by active transports and other means, the nutrients made available to transport by the blood to our cells. Here is pretty much your digestive tract. It's a tube from mouth to the anus. That's all it is. It's just a long tube. And then, of course, there are accessory organs that I would like you to know, and we emphasize and we'll talk about them. Your salivary glands. What accessory organs means? It means food does not necessarily pass through them. So that's what is called accessory organs. Salivary gland is one of them. Then the other one is liver. The other one is gallbladder. And the fourth one is pancreas. So these aid, they will help. They are part of the digestive system. So if somebody grab your collar in the mall and say, okay, liver, what system it belongs to? It belongs to the digestive system. It's the biggest gland in your body, but it belongs to the digestive system, not the endocrine system. So, so those are the four organs that are, they call them accessory organs. It doesn't mean that we don't need them. We do need them. Of course, liver, without it, we cannot live without it. But the other organs that food pass through are mouth, pharynx, esophagus, the tube from mouth to the stomach, and then stomach, of course, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. These are all the actual tubing of the digestive system. So there are a couple of terminologies I would like you to know. Ingestion, it means intake of the food via the mouth. Digestion, there are two types, mechanical breakdown and chemical breakdown. That's what digestion means, breakdown. And then absorption, it means when food is being absorbed into the digestive tract. Okay, so mechanical absorption, digestion, I'm sorry, is talking about, and chemical digestion. So stages of digestions continue the movement. So your digestive tract, as soon as you swallow food into your digestive tract, there is some kind of movement going on. And I'll talk about those. There are two types. One of them is peristalsis and the other one is segmentation, which at least on this slide, I don't see it. What happens, the peristalsis is the muscular movement throughout your digestive tract, all the way from esophagus to the anus. And then segmentation happens in the small intestine. Absorption is movement of nutrient, which at the end, your textbook spent a few slides, or maybe I spent a little bit, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, those three. Vitamins, of course, and minerals, those 5 things, they need to be absorbed from our food that we eat. Okay, into the elimination, removal of indigestible like fibers that we don't absorb into our body eventually. Defecation is the scientific name for, I guess, pooping. Okay, so wall of the digestive tract. So as I said, it's a tube from mouth to anus. Inside of this is the tube. Inside of that tube is called lumen, where food is passing through. When food is passing through, that area is called lumen. And then the very first layer is called mucosal layer. The second layer is submucosal layer. The last, not the last layer, one to the last layer is muscularis layer, and of course, serosa, which is end up into the lining with peritoneum. Peritoneum is a sac that surrounds your abdominal tract. It's called peritoneum. And it can be diseased, it can cause problem if it is diseased. Here they are, the three layers. Let me go over that. This is the lumen, as I said, where food is going through. And then it's not one of the layers of digestive tract. Then you have mucosal layer right here. You see those elevations. These are mucosal layer right there. And then under mucosal layer, the pinkish area right here is submucosal layer. Right here, they put the arrow on submucosal. And the muscularis layer, in the large intestine, small intestine, esophagus, you have two layers of muscles, sacral muscle and longitudinal muscle. And that's longitudinal muscle is on the outside and sacral muscle is on the inside. What sacral muscle means is muscles go around like this, okay? Longitudinal muscles go around like that, okay? I hope you can see my drawing. And then, of course, the outer layer is a connective tissue and epithelial tissue is called serosa layer. It's a visceral that covers the visceral part. Diverticulitis, I will talk about it in digestive when we get to large intestine. I don't know your textbook, but these things a little bit. There are pouches inside of your large intestine. And then if these pouches, little pouches get inflamed, it's called diverticulitis. Okay, and that's the name of the disease. Diverticulosis is the name of those pouches. He's talking about inflammatory bowel disease and then irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, which I guess we'll talk about those at the end. You know, your textbook spend a few slides on the teeth, parts of the teeth. I am skipping that. I'm not going to go over teeth. If you want to, you can go on your own and study the teeth, portions of the teeth, the layers, but not for this chapter. So mouth is made up of hard palate and soft palate. Right here, I'll show you a picture. And then, of course, the tonsils on the back, they are your largest lymph node in the body. And then they fight the bacteria that we eat. They're the first line of defense for the bacteria, you know, everything that we digest. And then they're right there. And then there is a single pharyngeal tonsils in the nasopharynx, commonly called adenoids. Right here are the teeth. So here is a hard palate, which on top, they call it hard palate because on top of it is your bone. There is a bone. On the soft palate, on this portion, there is nothing. There is no bone. That's what they call it, soft palate. And here they are. That's the only things you get for your teeth. And then the molars are in the back, and then the premolars are before the molars. And then you have the canine. They are very sharp-edged teeth right here. And then you have your incisors, which are in front of your teeth. And then you know, they look at your teeth at the quadrants. Okay, there are 4 quadrants. Anyhow, I said I'm not going to talk about it, so I'm not going to talk about it. The mouth and nasal passage leads into pharynx. It turns into pharynx, opens into food passage, esophagus, and trachea. On top of trachea, there is a cartilaginous made up of cartilage flap, which is called epiglottis. So epiglottis does not allow food to go to trachea. If it goes, if food or water goes into trachea, Houston, we got a problem. You have to cough and then so on and so forth. Swallowing, the act of swallowing starts off voluntarily, but as soon as the food goes down, it goes to your esophagus. The rest is involuntary. The smooth muscles take over. Okay, the smooth muscle, we talked about it at the beginning of semester, they are the ones that you do not have control over. So food goes down, and that's it. And here they are talking about epiglottis and glottis, all of those goodies. The process of peristalsis, the food that is in the esophagus is called bolus, and the food that is in the stomach is called chyme. Okay, before food goes to the stomach, right here, it's called bolus. And the peristaltic movement, I would like you to know something about it. There are circular muscles inside and longitudinal muscles outside. So what happens when the circular muscles right here are contracting, the longitudinal muscles relax. And then when longitudinal muscles contract, circular muscles relax. As a result of this contraction and relaxation, food is pushed down into the stomach. Contains that pushes food through the digestive sphincters, ring of muscles that act as a valve between esophagus and stomach. There is one set of sphincters, and between stomach and small intestine, there is pyloric sphincters, cardiac sphincters, between esophagus and stomach, cardiac sphincters, and pyloric sphincters between stomach and small intestine, the duodenum to be exact. So when food goes back from your stomach into the esophagus, that's why you feel like a heartburn. You have, the pH of the stomach is very strong. It's not 7, but the pH in the esophagus is around 7. So that acid that goes from stomach back into the trachea, into esophagus, you feel the pain and a heart pain. And of course, it goes through the sphincter, which, as I call it, cardiac sphincters. Vomiting, it talks about it here. I don't have much to say. Stomach. Stomach has 3 layers of muscles, unlike esophagus and small intestine. Stomach is located between esophagus and small intestine. It has circular muscle, longitudinal muscles, and oblique muscles right here on the bottom. Circular muscles, of course, they run this way. Longitudinal muscles run this way, and oblique muscles run this way. So let's show you. Here we go. You can see the pictures. And the folds of the stomach is called rugi or rugi. I should write it down. Both pronunciation is correct, rugi or rugi. And the folds of stomach, when you eat food, these folds will disappear to some extent. And then, so the rugi, they disappear. That's what the folds of the small intestine is. So they don't call this villus in the small intestine anymore. They call it gastric pit, and gastric gland are on the bottom, right in this area. And they, of course, there are cells that they release gastric juice and so on and so forth. Stomach continued, rugi, I talked about it right here. And gastric pits, the mucosa layer has gastric pits contain gastric glands, and gastric glands produce gastric juice, which is pepsin. It's an enzyme which breaks down protein and hydrochloric acid. Okay, that's what gastric juice is. Gastric juice is made up of hydrochloric acid. The pH is very strong, around 2. This is one of the time, again, in this class, I don't expect you to memorize too many numbers, but this is one of the numbers I would like you to know, a pH of 2. Okay, it kills bacteria and activates pepsin, of course, hydrochloric acid. It turns pepsinogen to pepsin, and pepsin becomes active. Stomach continues, normally stomach empties in about 2 to 6 hours. So it depends what kind of food you eat. If it is a fatty food, it leaves stomach later. If it is carbohydrate, it leaves stomach first. And if it is protein, that's the second one. That chyme is a mixture, I already talked about that. Pyloric sphincters is a sphincter between stomach and small intestine. Heartburn, okay, they call it, if it is consistent, if it is chronic for a long time, they call it GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, they refer to it. Here it is, that's showing you the GERD, that this is very acidic. This area is basic, pH of 7.4, pH of 2, somewhere in that neighborhood. If that pH, if that acid goes up here, then you have heartburn. Okay, small intestine, pancreas secrete digestive enzymes through a duct into the duodenum. So duodenum is the first portion of the digestive of the small intestine, and then pancreas has pancreatic juice, which neutralizes the acid that is coming from the stomach. Okay, so, and then bile is one of them. Bile is referred to as a biological soap. Just like soap, you wash dishes. So what happens with bile? Bile is made in liver. It is stored in gallbladder. And when you eat food, fatty food, of course, any kind of food, but mostly fatty food, when it goes from stomach, goes to the small intestine, the bile breaks down the fat. Okay, so it can be absorbed easier in the small intestine. People who move their gallbladder, you know, they have to watch their diet, but they don't have to worry about it because liver makes bile. There are a long list of functions of liver that later on in these PowerPoints you should know. Emulsifies fat, it means it breaks down fat. Mechanical digestion causes fat droplets to disperse into the water, expose more the lipase. Lipase is the enzyme that breaks down fat. Okay, it's an enzyme. Bile is not an enzyme. Enzyme, it means that it proceeds a chemical reaction, it moves forward a chemical reaction. At the end, it does not change. Okay, so the bile does not change. Bile does change at the end, but enzyme does not. Okay, so produced by pancreas, hydrolyzes fats into glycerol and fatty acids. Okay, small intestine, pancreatic amylase, again, trypsin from pancreas, pancreatic amylase, it breaks down starch, protease, it breaks down proteins, and so on and so forth. Villi are finger-like projections, singular is villus. So you already saw it in the slides. We do have slides of it, for microscopic slides of it for the lab portion that you should know. We do have a model of it for the lab portion. Again, you should know for lab practical exam. These are for second lab, digestive system is the second lab practical exam. So those are the things that, on top of what happened, these villus, if you would, on top of villus, there are columnar epithelial tissue. Okay, so columnar. And the columnar cells, they have, this is a columnar, I'm gonna draw it right here. It looked like a cuboid, sorry about that. So, and on top of it, the cell membrane folded back and forth. That is called microvilli or brush border. So the reason for that is to increase surface area, so for food and nutrient to be absorbed into the cells. And remember, under these columnar epithelial tissue, right here, there is blood vessels. So the food and nutrient, they're coming from lumen, they go through these columnar epithelial tissue, brush border, and they be absorbed right here, increase. And of course, on these brush border microvilli, there are enzymes to break down, even do more digestion. So contain brush border, I think I talked about all of this. And here they are, the finger-like projection. This is the real picture. These cells, you can see these cells are the clear cells. These cells are complex cells, but right here is a simple columnar epithelial tissue. And right here is a transmission electron picture of it, which is a brush border. The cell membrane has folded back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Here is a villus. Here is a lumen. Remember the mucosa layer up here, submucosa, mucosa, submucosa, muscularis. And underneath of that is serosa layer. Right here, they showed it to you nicely. Beautiful submucosa, mucosa layer, villus. Lacteal is where the big, large fat molecules are being absorbed. The blood vessel underneath, it absorbs, right here, it absorbs the nutrient. And goblet cells, of course, right here, the goblet cells secrete mucus. Okay, so, and then underneath of all of this, there is a layer of circular and longitudinal muscles for peristalsis. Okay, lacteal, I talked about that. It absorbs chylomicrons. The glycerol and fatty acids are lipid proteins droplets called lipid. They are carrier chylomicrons. They carry large fat molecules from the villus area into the blood. Okay, and of course into the lacteal. And lacteal dumps all of that fat near subclavian of the heart, a vein, subclavian vein. That was a quiz question last night. Okay, after nutrients are absorbed, they are eventually carried in cells in the body parts. Here they are, they're showing you each one of the food categories. Carbohydrates, they break down to single glucose molecule and they are absorbed through brush border. On this membrane here could be the enzymes sucrase, maltase, and lactase. Okay, so the enzyme lactase is here. People who do not have the enzyme lactase here, they cannot absorb lactose, dairy products. Okay, amino acids, they have to be broken down. The protease, they call them, the enzyme right here is protease. They break down to single amino acids, or sometimes 2 amino acids can get by in here. And the fat, they have different stories. Large fat molecules through the chylomicron, which carry them. Small fat, small and medium fat size, large and medium fat size through chylomicrons. Small fat molecules, they have the lipase, enzyme lipase right here. It breaks them down even further. And of course, already a bile broke them down further. And now they have to be absorbed to a normal size. So those are the 3 major component food which is in our diet, and you know the fate of each one of them. Lactose intolerance, and I already talked about that. People who do not have that enzyme, they cannot take dairy products. Celiac disease is an autoimmune response against a protein called gluten, and that is found in food. Nowadays, you go to grocery store, there's a lot of gluten-free products, and the presence of gluten in small intestine is also an inflammatory response. Body deal with gluten as a foreign material and react to it. Abdominal pain, diarrhea, malnutrition. Okay. Pancreas, the very first accessory organs of the digestive system, located behind the stomach. Most pancreatic cells produce pancreatic juice, which enters the duodenum via the pancreatic duct, contains sodium bicarbonate and digestive enzyme. These are buffers which neutralizes, if you would, the acid from stomach. Okay. Pancreas, there are 2 types of diabetes. Pancreas also release insulin and glucagon. They did not mention glucagon. Also, it is released from pancreas. But you have 2 types of diabetes. Diabetes by 1, not enough insulin. So usually normally diagnosed in childhood that the body does not make enough insulin. And then of course with insulin shots, which bacteria makes them, I talked about in chapter 8, not all bacteria are bad. in a factory, company, a biotechnology company. They make insulin and they put them in a little vial and the people inject it to themselves. The other type 2 diabetes, of course, they all have different name. There is a second name, but your textbook stayed away from it. I stay away from it too. They can be confusing. The body cells are resistant to insulin. It means the body makes enough insulin, but the cells, for some reason or another, they cannot accept that insulin. So that is a problem. That is a bigger problem than the first one. The first one, you can fix it with just injecting insulin to yourself. The second one is more difficult to fix it. So normally occurred in adulthood. Type 2 and risk factors is obesity, inactivity, family history causes that type of diabetes. Here's showing the relationship between gallbladder, liver, pancreas to them. Nice picture. Make sure you look at it. And then in the lab, I showed you that structure right here, which is called common bile duct. This is duodenum, and then these are called hepatic duct right here. This is not labeled, but it's called cystic duct. Okay, and then here's a cross section of the liver, the central vein, and these are hepatic portal vein. Hepatic portal vein brings the food and nutrient from small intestine into the liver. So the first place food we eat goes from small intestine is into the liver. Liver takes care of all of that food, cleans it out, organize them, put them away, break them even more if they have to be broken down more. So liver has a lot of functions, and every night or on Saturday night and Sunday night when you drink, you're damaging your liver. There were studies before that they said one glass of wine every day, it's good for your heart. Let's assume that. Let's say it is good for your heart, but what about your liver? It ruins your liver. The main thing that ruins liver is alcohol. And then imagine you drink it constantly over a period of long time, then it's not good by the time you get older. The largest gland in the body, I already said that, lies mainly in the upper right hand side of under the diaphragm. It has lobes, structural and functional units of lobes. So people who need liver, they can cut some of the livers and it grows back. But if you cut more than a certain amount, then it cannot grow back. Okay, so liver has that ability to grow back, but it has to be a certain amount. Hepatic portal vein brings blood to the liver from GI tract. Already talked about that. The lobes filter the blood, removing poisonous substances. So when I was a kid and my parents made me to eat liver, I liked it, I don't know, but now I don't make my kids to eat liver because liver is full of poison, full of toxic material. That's what liver does. It gets rid of toxic material. Okay, I'm not gonna go over these guys, but I would like you to study them. Make sure that I ask a lot liver quiz and exam questions. So I would like you to know these things plus a little bit more, which is coming up. Liver continued stores vitamins involved in blood glucose or homeostasis, stores glucose as glycogen. I think we talked about this, and release it later on during the day if you need it. Converts glycerol and amino acids to glucose is possible, and the amino acids convert to glucose, use urea is formed. Produces plasma proteins, regulates blood cholesterol level. It has so many functions. It makes bile, and then of course if you lose your liver, my God, it's hard to live. Your red blood cells live 120 days. After 120 days in your body circulation, what happens? Liver breaks them down, and then it makes a green pigment by breaking down the blood. And then when your feces is brown because of this product, this fluid, and then if your feces is not brown, then you're gonna call it up. Gallbladder, pear shape, And then organ just below the liver stores biles, gallstones made up of stones-like materials, hepatitis and cirrhosis. Cirrhosis is the orange, when the liver tissues die, they become cirrhosis, cirrhotic, and then and that's not reversible anymore. Hepatitis, it is reversible. Jaundice is when the disease bile pigments to leak into the blood, causing jaundice, and you see the person yellowish, the eyes, usually the eyes is a good indication of jaundice. Hepatitis, you have different hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and nowadays they're coming up with more inflammation of the liver, has different forms. Hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. So I talked about those a little bit. Make sure you study them, you know them a little bit what they do. Cirrhosis, okay, chronic, it means over a long period of time, not a short time. Acute, it means short time. Chronic, it means over a long period of time. When liver becomes fatty and then filled with fibrous scar tissue, it's called cirrhosis. Of course, alcohol, malnutrition, excessive alcohol always damages the liver. Secretion of digestive juice is controlled by the nervous system and hormones. A meal rich in protein causes the stomach to produce the hormone gastrin, and gastrin increases secretory activity of the gastric glands in the stomach. Here they are, the relationship between liver, stomach, gallbladder, blood vessels. Nice picture, but they didn't label the hormones and the protein molecules here that are all involved, which is okay, just the organs. He mentioned the organs. Regulation of digestive secretions, secretin secreted by duodenum, is stimulated by hydrochloric acid and cholecytokinin. It's a CCK for abbreviation, released by duodenum when protein and fat are present. So when they are present, it causes the liver, when protein and fats are present, duodenum releases CCK, and then CCK goes to liver, increase production of bile, and then cause the release of gallbladder, release bile. And these hormones increase production of pancreatic juice as well. Very important hormone, CCK. Make sure you know about it. Secretin, yes, of course, releases, stimulates by hydrochloric acid, so it is important. Large intestine. So what happens includes 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Your textbook is mentioning them: cecum, colon, rectum, and anal canal. At the end, cecum is the first portion. Vermiform appendix. Vermiform, it means look like a worm. That's what vermiform means. Worm, not warm. Worm-like appendix that projections of the cecum and fights infections. And then appendicitis, it means inflamed appendix. Itis at the end of the word appendix, it means inflammation. And peritonitis is a life-threatening infection of the peritoneum. It can, there are different reasons, different causes for peritoneum, but here they refer to appendix. That appendix can go into, it's a sharp, huge pain. You have to go see a doctor and they remove your appendix immediately before it gets to peritonitis. Here is the shape of your large intestine. Small intestine would be in here, okay? But here is the ascending colon. Here is a transverse colon. Here is descending colon, where the poop comes out through rectum and then the anal canal. So I would like you to know this ascending colon, and of course this is the appendix right here. The function we don't know, is full of bacteria, and maybe at one time it was a larger cecum, but it became smaller over a period of time. There are theories. You open up textbooks, everybody talks about it differently. And then what happens, orifice, it means opening. Anytime you see the term orifice in your book, means opening. Cecum is a pouch that in some animals is huge and it stores food, but in us human, it does not store that much food. It's not that big, okay? So when indigestibles come through, they go through ascending colon, works against gravity. Transverse colons go parallel to gravity, and then descending colon is pushed out. The fecal material it comes out through. They call it sigmoid colon. Sigmoid colon is that area that is bending. Okay, large intestine colon includes ascending, transverse, descending rectum. I think I talked about all of these. The rectum opens at the anus where defecation, scientific for pooping, expulsion of feces occurs. Okay, function of the large intestine, yes, you should know that. Does not produce digestive enzymes, does not absorb nutrient except certain vitamins. That's right. It absorbs water from feces and prevent dehydration, and then absorbs vitamin produced by intestinal flora like bacteria. E. coli make vitamin K here, which is important right here, which is important in your blood clotting factors, and bacteria breaks down indigestible material and produce B complexes as well. Too. Function of large intestine continued, form feces, 3/4 water and 1/4 solid. Bacteria and dietary fibers, of course, are not digested. They come out, and bacteria digestions and indigested material cause the odor of the feces. And then stereocholine, a breakdown product of bilirubin and oxidized iron, causes the brown color feces, which I talked about it. I just didn't give you the term. Stereocholine. Defecation and the rest, I'm not going to read it to you. Diarrhea, constipation, hemorrhoids, enlarged inflamed blood vessels around the anus, and then usually pregnancy, aging, anal intercourse can cause hemorrhoids. Diverticulosis, the pouches, I talked about that. Diverticulitis, we talked about irritable bowel syndrome, we talked about that. IBD, I talked about it. Ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Please read these, make sure you know them. Polyps, when you get older, these little nodules are formed in the large intestine, and then of course they have to be removed. Some of them could be life-threatening. Obesity is significantly overweight. There is a BMI right here. If you are not within that table of BMI, then that person is obese. Of course, if it is muscle, there are a few diseases. Nutrients, I talked about this before: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, minerals, and vitamins. Those are the minerals. Organic molecules, compounds using for metabolism, needs to digest, and so on and so forth. Part of the coenzymes. There are 13 vitamins, 2 types: fat solubles and water solubles. The fat solubles are ADEC, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. These are fat solubles. You take too much of them, they're stored in your fat. The B complexes, C, they're all water soluble. Okay, so those are the story behind all of these. I should say all of these. B12, B6. Okay. Antioxidants, they are molecules that work against superoxide or hydroxides. So they are molecules. They're not vitamins, but there is a big, huge chapters in almost every textbook. Not yours, I guess. So vitamin C, vitamin E, and vitamin A considered to be antioxidants, and they're good for you. The diseases, anorexia nervosa, it's a psychological or the fear of getting fat. So the person does not eat and exercise a lot, so they lose every fat. As I said, you do need fat. Your body needs fat. Of course, in moderation, BMI table, it says that. Bulimia nervosa, they eat a lot of amount of high calories food, and they binge eating, and followed by throwing it up. Binge eating, overeating without purging, without throwing it up, and of course, stress and anxiety, anger, depression, all of these can contribute to binge eating, common in obese people. There is a new one. When I was a student, nobody talked about this, but now it is in textbooks, and I'm glad it is, because I had friends who they pumped iron. They were huge. I can't, you know, I tell you stories and you guys don't believe me. They were huge. And they said, Amir, what can I do to become bigger? I said, man, I mean, bigger than this. How? So as they call it, muscle dysmorphia. Okay. Think usually happens in male. And then what happens, they like to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they are already big. Okay. They pass that BMI curve, which I deleted it in here. Okay, and that's the end of the material for this chapter. Make sure you study this chapter and know the material very well.